How you doing, guys? Today, I thought I'd take a look back at the original Star Wars films since the new one's coming out next month, and I figured I'd just rate the original six. Mainly because, with Disney's acquisition of Star Wars, as it stands now, they're planning to make a new movie every year for at least the next 5 years. So, when it's all said and done, some of the films on this list won't even be on it. There'll be enough to do a top 10 list as opposed to just rating, you know, the six that have been done. And just because, it's just a weird thing. Because, like, now Star Wars isn't probably ever going to have an end. Because I think Disney is planning to do the Marvel treatment to Star Wars. So there'll probably be, who knows, like 24 Star Wars films by it's all said and done. Like, I know they'll make them long after I'm dead. So, without further ado, I'm going to get into my rankings for the original six Star Wars films, from best to worst. Alright, so I'm going to start with the best, obviously, my favorite, which is The Empire Strikes Back. Now, initially, when I first saw this movie, I didn't really like it very much. It kind of confused me. And the reasons why I didn't like it are the reasons why I love it now. So basically, this movie takes the idea of the sequel and turns it on its head. It really could have really easily been a rehash of the first movie, but they stayed away from that. Like, I don't know if it was a happy accident or whatever, but like, the big battle in this movie happens at the beginning and not the end. The heroes are separated for most of the movie, and at the end they don't even get to regroup properly. Like, they're missing a guy at the end. And of course then you have the end, which is a cliffhanger ending, which I think this is probably one of the first movies to ever do this, like blockbuster type movies. Because when you look at the sequels that came before it, like Rocky 2 and Jaws 2, those movies were pretty much self-contained, where this one, you could tell it was actually part of a greater story. And it's interesting that, not too many movies had done it, like, after it. It wasn't until Back to the Future Part 2, and then later on, like, stuff like The Matrix and stuff like that, and now everything gets split in half. But it was pretty novel at the time to end a movie that way in a cliffhanger and make you wait to see how it plays out. But of course, with this one, they don't even make him once a year, so you had to wait 3 years to see how it would play out. I really love this film a lot. I like it for all the things that it does. All right, so let's go on to number 2, which is Star Wars: A New Hope. Originally, I had this further down on the list, but this is a film that basically solidified my love of cinema. So I thought about it. I thought, no, this deserves to be a number 2 on my list. I remember several years back, I was reading a top 10 list of science fiction films in Empire magazine, and they excluded Star Wars: A New Hope, and their reasoning was because they felt it was more fantasy than science fiction. And I thought about it, and I agreed with them, because basically this movie is essentially like Lord of the Rings in outer space when you look at it. Like, you got Obi-Wan Kenobi is basically a stand-in for Gandalf, and then Darth Vader is the Black Knight. Chewbacca and Han Solo are bandits, and then you have the White Knight, or farm boy, Luke Skywalker, and the Princess Leia, who's obviously just a princess. But what I find interesting about this film is they never get to complete the quest. Like, the quest starts in Tatooine, where Obi-Wan tells Luke Skywalker, "Hey, we got to go to Alderaan, look at these plans or whatever for the Death Star or whatever." Even though they don't know that at the point, and then they don't get a chance to get there because Alderaan gets blown up before they even get there. They get stuck up on the Death Star instead, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then you end up losing out on Obi-Wan's character. He does kind of come back, but he's not truly like an Obi-Wan the White or whatever. Like, he just kind of comes back as a little ghost guy or whatever. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I wish that the other films had kept the fantasy type elements. I think it could have made the films more interesting. Like, there was like the kind of like that in Empire when he was on Dagobah, like, the swamp planet. Only thing was missing was orcs. But if you look at Yoda, it could really easily be a stand-in for a Gollum when you look at the characters and how they are, even though, Yoda is the exact opposite of Gollum. All right, so let's go on to number 3, and that's Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I know a lot of people don't really like this movie, but I really do like this film a fair bit. I know it has its flaws. Like, there's quite a few. Like, some of the dialogue towards the end between Anakin and Obi-Wan is kind of lame. And the film, for me, I think is a little too tight, in a sense. I think there were some scenes that were cut out with Padme, which ended up turning her role into a glorified cameo in this movie. All she pretty much does is says she's pregnant and has the babies and dies. The deleted scenes show her being the mother of the Resistance, which is kind of unfortunate that they lost those scenes. Another thing that kind of bugged me about this one was that they didn't introduce General Grievous properly. They introduced him in the original Clone Wars shorts, instead of like in episode 2 where they should have did it proper, where if you haven't seen those shorts, you're like, well, who's this guy, which is unfortunate. Another thing they didn't do too, and this is more of a problem with the sequels, so they didn't focus enough on the Jedi Council, so when they do get wiped out, it's not as powerful as it should have been. Alright, let's go on to number 4, and that's Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. This one, I think, is the most uneven of the Star Wars movies, mainly because all the scenes with Anakin and Padme really don't work, for the most part. Not until they get to Tatooine and he finds out that his mom has been taken by the Tusken Raiders. But most of the scenes don't work, especially when they're on her home planet and they're like trying to talk about ideas and stuff. A lot of those scenes are lame, and the scene where he floats the fruit across the table, that's kind of lame too. The only scenes that save the first part of the movie for me are the scenes with Obi-Wan Kenobi when he's on the water planet and he's talking to the aliens and they're creating the clones and stuff like that. I thought that was cool. And then Jango Fett and that. The second half of the film was what saved it for me. You have Christopher Lee. You got all those weird bug-like creatures on that planet. And then, of course, you get the big battle at the end, which I think goes on for like 40 minutes. And then Christopher Lee versus Yoda, well, that was pretty cool as well. So there's that. I know that when this played in IMAX, they had to cut the film down to under 2 hours, and that cut actually played better because they got rid of most of the scenes with Anakin and Padme. So, all right, let's go on to 5th place, and that's Return of the Jedi. This was the film at one time when I was a kid that I actually liked more than Empire, even though this one I think is the most derivative of the Star Wars films in a sense, even though Phantom is a derivative too, but this one with this, I wish Lucas had had a better idea than just coming up with a second Death Star. But the main thing that bugged me about this movie was the whole Endor subplot, and that has nothing to do even with the Ewoks. It's the fact that you would think that the Force Field Generator could be contained on the Death Star. There's no reason for it other than the fact that Lucas needed a subplot for Han Solo and Princess Leia and Chewbacca, because he had nothing for them to do for the second half of the movie. He knew he needed to create the conflict between father and son with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, but he had nothing for the rest of them. So, and I also think that they should have killed off Lando Calrissian in the rescue of Han Solo. That would have completed his arc and his redemption in a better way, because he has nothing really to do either in the second half. Sure, he blows up the Death Star, but he doesn't even get to go with the rest of them and have their adventure on Endor. He's just stuck by himself in that weird guy with the, I don't even know what his name is, but he's a weird character. And the last thing that bugs me about this one was the fact that Lucas had decided to make Princess Leia Luke Skywalker's sister, which really bothered me in a sense, because then it's getting all incesty and stuff, because there was a lot of time, I feel, between the first film and the third film, and you think something could have happened between those two that they need to be talking about. Alright, let's go on to last place, which everybody knows what it is by now, and that's the Phantom Menace. And Yeah, not too much to say about this one. Like, the story for this one comes down to when I saw the initial trailer, and there was two characters that stood out to me. One character I was hoping was going to be in the movie a lot, and the other one I was hoping wasn't going to be in the film very much. And you pretty much know who they are. Like, the one I really wanted to see in this film is Darth Maul. I thought he was a really cool. I love the design and this, he was a really kick-ass character. And the other one was Jar Jar Binks. In the trailer, they show a scene where he gets his tongue caught in the pod racer beam. And when I saw that, I thought, oh no. I hope this character is only in the one scene. And sure enough, nope, he's in the whole damn movie doing his baby talk, or whatever you want to call it. So, one other thing I did like about this film was I liked the pod race. On the minus side, I didn't like the fact that after, Anakin gets them off that planet, there was no reason for his character to stay anymore in the story. Like, once he got to the Jedi Council, he should have stayed with them, and they could have won off to the final battle. There was no reason to bring a child into a battle. And I thought that was really, kind of silly on their part to have that story go that way. And to have him accidentally blow up that space station that was controlling all the droids, I thought was kind of lame. I was going to say something else, but I've lost my train of thought now. And another main reason why I really don't like this film is because this is the one that colored the other two films. I think when most people think about the Star Wars prequels, the first thing they think is the Phantom Menace, and then they crap all over the other two. Even though the second movie in Episode 2 is kind of a little uneven, well, actually very uneven. But I don't know what to say. Like, if they cut this one out of the series and moved them all down one and made a different story for Episode 3, I'd be fine with that. Alright guys, so I guess that's my rankings. And the main reason why I had to do this is because since Disney has got the rights to make more films, and they're at least making 5 more films within the next 5 years, like, some of these movies will probably be out of my top 5 or 6 list by that time. And I might even, if I'm still doing YouTube videos, I might even go back and revisit and re-rank them. Like, hopefully The Force Awakens is good enough to be at the top of the list when it comes around again. I think the absence of Lucas is probably only going to be a good thing, as opposed to a negative thing. And hopefully there won't be any kind of special editions of the new films as they come out. So I guess I should put these all together. Maybe I can get a nice thumbnail pick. I'm not even going to bother to put them in any kind of order. Alright guys, so that's close enough. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.